You know that feeling?
Yeah.
It's this quiet, persistent ache. Maybe a dull sense of nothingness just sort of sitting right there in your chest.
Hmm.
It's the kind of feeling that, well, it shows up even when on the surface everything looks okay. Maybe even better than okay.
Right. Like you've done all the things you were told you were supposed to do.
Exactly. You went to school, got the degree, landed the job, maybe even climbed a few rungs on the ladder,
Yeah.
built relationships, hit those milestones everyone talks about, pretty much right on schedule,
Checked all the
all
boxes.
the boxes. And yet, the feeling is still there. It makes you wonder, sometimes quietly, sometimes almost like a shout you can barely stand. Why?
Hmm.
Why, despite all this outward success, does it feel like you've been running full speed towards something that wasn't even real?
It's a really powerful paradox, isn't it? This idea that you can achieve what, the world calls success, tick every single box and still feel this deep sense of emptiness.
Yeah.
We're often conditioned to believe that following a specific path, that script is the guaranteed route to fulfillment. But what we're really digging into today, it challenges that whole belief, like fundamentally.
Okay.
It asks us to think about the possibility that this feeling, this functional emptiness, people sometimes call it, it isn't a sign that you failed at all.
Right.
But maybe it's a signal that the life you've built, the one you work so hard on, the one that looks absolutely perfect on paper, well, it might actually be the wrong one for you.
And that.
Yeah.
That's a genuinely hard thing to sit with
Yeah.
because you did the work. You followed the instructions.
Right.
You tried.
Yeah, absolutely tried.
So our aim here, I think, is to really lean to that discomfort, to
Hmm.
explore these ideas about what might be going on beneath the surface. We want to understand what this functional emptiness actually is, dig into what some people call the uncomfortable truths behind it, and really wrestle with that big challenge that gets put forward. What
Hmm.
does it actually mean to burn the script? And what does it take to shift towards living a life based on what feels authentic inside you instead of, chasing approval?
It means exploring some pretty challenging concepts and some powerful metaphors that might completely change how you think about success, happiness, and what it really means to live a life that feels like it's actually yours.
Yeah.
We want these insights to land, in a way that resonates, that maybe sparks some real reflection on the path you're currently walking.
Okay, let's start right there then. With that first big, heavy idea. This paradox of doing everything right according to the rules and yet still feeling this aching emptiness inside.
That feeling, it's so often described almost like a physical thing, that dull, aching, nothing sitting in your chest. It's
Yeah.
not just a vague sense of, something's off.
Well,
It feels like a core piece is missing, like a quiet but insistent alarm bell ringing somewhere deep down, even when everything outside says you should be perfectly happy.
right.
And the way I see it, the idea being put forward is that this feeling isn't necessarily a sign you failed, that you fell short of those expectations set by the script.
Right. The really uncomfortable possibility, the one that kind of makes your stomach clench, is that the life you've built feels hard, feels empty. Not because you weren't good enough or because you failed at it,
Mm.
but precisely because you succeeded. You succeeded beautifully at building a life that just wasn't aligned with who you really are. You followed the blueprint perfectly,
Yeah,
but it was for someone else's house.
exactly. And let's talk about that blueprint for a second, that script. It's so deeply ingrained, isn't it? It's the plan we absorb almost from day one.
No, yeah.
Go to school, get good grades, get into a good college, land a stable job, ideally one with status or good pay, climb the career ladder, be polite, fit in nicely, buy a house, get married, maybe have kids,
Uh-huh.
and present this polished version of your life, right? Post those perfect vacation photos, share the highlight reel, and the unspoken rule, but it's loud. Smile, be grateful for what you have, and above all, be happy.
And it felt like gospel truth, didn't it? Like if you just followed these steps, checked each box carefully, then eventually that feeling of fulfillment, of purpose, of being really alive would just click into place.
Yeah, you believed it.
Yeah.
You believed that by doing these things, you were building a life that would automatically feel good, feel right.
But the stark reality, the one that, well, so many people seem to confront, is laid out so clearly. You have the job, you're doing okay, maybe even great. People around you are saying, wow, you're doing so well. You've hit the milestones, you have the stuff the script promised.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are those moments, staring at the ceiling before the alarm goes off or sitting in your car after work, just in that quiet pause between things.
Mm-hmm.
And that question just echoes, is this, is this it? Is this really all there is?
And right behind that thought, almost inevitably comes the guilt.
Oh, the guilt is
Well,
huge.
because logically, on paper, your life looks good. You should be happy. You should feel proud. That's what the script told you was the correct response to having
Mm.
checked all those boxes. But the difficult truth is, you aren't. Not really, not deep down. The way your life looks on the outside feels completely disconnected from how it feels on the inside.
And this massive gap, this discrepancy between the external validation, the attaboys, and the internal void, that's really the doorway into these uncomfortable truths, isn't it?
Yeah.
About maybe living a life that isn't actually yours.
Exactly. The first one hits hard. It's this idea that you ended up following their plan, the world's plan, maybe your parents' plan, society's plan, but not your own.
Oof, yeah.
It really forces you to look at where your definition of success came from. Was it something that grew from inside you, from a real sense of purpose or passion? Or was it, adopted? An external standard you just started chasing without really thinking about it.
Mm.
The life you've built might look great to others. It lines up perfectly with all those societal markers of achievement. But the internal reality, as it's sometimes put, feels like slow death on the inside.
Slow death on the inside. Wow.
That phrase is incredibly powerful. It's not like a sudden implosion, but this gradual wearing away of your spirit, your energy, your sense of who you are, happening subtly, maybe over years, as you live this life that isn't true.
Yeah.
And you see it in these examples that just, they resonate so deeply. The person making six figures, totally successful by any external measure, who finds themselves crying in a parking lot, just overwhelmed by this sadness they can't explain because, well, everything is fine.
Right. Or people in relationships, maybe surrounded by family or a partner, who feel this crushing loneliness that's actually worse than being single because they can't bring their real self into those connections.
Mm.
Or someone with a beautiful house, full of nice things, but who feels this profound silence in their own heart. These aren't stories of failure. They're vivid pictures of succeeding brilliantly at following the script, only to find the prize is emptiness.
And that's the key distinction, isn't it? Success, when it's defined and chased just based on that external script, it doesn't automatically mean you made the right choices for you. Not at all. Sometimes it just means you were really, really good at following a plan that was never meant for you. A plan whose measures of success had absolutely nothing to do with your inner vitality or sense of purpose. You were efficient, capable, effective at building something that just doesn't fit.
It's like you didn't fail the test. You just aced the exam for the wrong class entirely.
Mm.
And there's that powerful metaphor you use. You didn't fail at life. You just succeeded at something that never truly fit you.
Mm.
You poured years, maybe decades, into climbing a mountain, putting in all that incredible effort, facing the struggles, pushing towards the summit, only to finally get there, look out at the view, and realize with this crushing clarity,
Mm.
oh, this isn't my mountain.
Yeah.
And standing there objectively at the top, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels hollow. It
Oh.
feels like you wasted all that energy on a destination that held zero meaning for you personally.
And that realization, that feeling, often leads to the next challenging point. Deep down, you probably knew. You knew this wasn't quite right all along. That aching feeling, that little quiet voice, those moments of questioning, they were signals. The difficulty usually isn't figuring out what's wrong. It's finding the courage, the sheer guts to actually admit it. First to yourself, which is hard enough, and then maybe eventually to others. That inner knowing is there, it's powerful, but all the external pressures and the sheer comfort of the familiar script make it incredibly hard to listen to.
Which leads us straight into the second uncomfortable truth, and this one feels like it's right at the heart of the problem.
Yeah.
You never gave yourself permission to want what you really want.
This idea that somewhere along the line, maybe consciously, maybe not, you decided your actual genuine desires were somehow off limits, not allowed, so you buried them.
Why? Why did we do that?
Well, some compelling reasons are often suggested. Maybe those desires felt too much, too big, too bold, too different from what everyone else seemed to want or do, or they felt too risky, involving uncertainty or the potential for failure, things the script actively discourages.
Right, stick to the safe path.
Exactly. Or maybe too impractical, not fitting neatly into a predictable career or life plan. And this one's huge. Often seen as too selfish because going after your own deep wants can feel like you're neglecting duties or expectations or letting people down.
So you push them down. You bury those real desires under layers of other stuff. What are those layers? Often it seems to be things like the relentless chase for approval, wanting to be liked, accepted, validated by others.
Absolutely. Buried under fear, too. Fear of being judged if you step off that path, fear of failing if you try something ambitious, fear of the unknown, fear of not being good enough if you aren't following the approved formula.
And buried under the sheer weight of expectations, what your parents hope for, what your friends seem to admire, what society clearly rewards and celebrates. These external forces become like heavy soil packed down on top of your authentic self.
And the inevitable result of burying all that, as it's described, you end up stuck living a life that looks fine but feels hollow. On the outside, the performance continues. You smile, you go through the motions, you play the expected roles at work, in relationships, socially, you keep achieving things according to the script. But inside, where it really matters, you feel numb. That connection to your inner world, to your own vitality, it's just severed.
And this state, this being numb but still functioning perfectly well in the outside world, that's what gets called functional emptiness.
That's a chillingly accurate term, isn't it? You function, you are capable, you show up to your job, you manage your money, pay the bills, keep your promises, maybe even go to the gym or keep up hobbies that look good.
Yeah.
But what's missing is crucial. There's no fire, no spark of passion or real engagement. There's no soul,
Yeah.
no deep connection to meaning or purpose, and fundamentally, there's no you. The authentic, vibrant core of who you are just isn't present in your day-to-day life.
You're basically living on autopilot, just going through the motions, automatically checking boxes you didn't write, tasks and goals set by someone else's script.
Yeah.
You find yourself saying yes to things that feel wrong, deep down. Saying yes when you mean no, because saying no feels too hard, too risky, too much like breaking the rules.
And the most common performance, when anyone asks how you are, the automatic reply comes out saying, I'm fine, when you're not even close. It's this constant, exhausting act of pretending to be okay when your inner world feels like a desert.
And this state, this functional emptiness, leads directly to one of the most, I think, revealing questions that gets asked, one designed to just cut right through the performance.
Which is?
When was the last time you felt fully alive? And it's stressed. This isn't about feeling productive or validated or praised or even well paid. It's asking about a totally different kind of feeling. It pushes you to pause and really feel the answer.
And how is that feeling of being fully alive described? It's not about external success. It's talked about as a buzzing feeling in your chest, a real physical sense of energy and presence, a deep, grounded sense of this is me. That feeling of total alignment where your inner self matches your outer experience. Moments where time disappears, where you're so completely absorbed in what you're doing that the clock just vanishes.
Yeah, flow state kind of thing.
Exactly. Times when, in that feeling of vibrant presence, you finally remember who the hell you are, beneath the roles, beneath the expectations.
And the message here is very direct. If you struggle to remember a time you felt like that, or if the question itself just brings up this knot of fear or anxiety or maybe even dread, the conclusion offered is stark. That's your answer.
Wow.
It suggests that the absence of this feeling, or the fear it triggers, is a direct result of how you've been living disconnected from your true core, operating inside the lines of that external script.
And this brings us right back to that core conflict. You've built your life primarily around getting approval from others, fitting in, being seen as successful by outside standards, instead of building it around authenticity, around what genuinely resonates deep within your soul.
And the message seems unwavering. Until you shift that foundation from approval-seeking to authenticity, you'll continue to feel that soul-crushing numbness.
Which leads us into the third uncomfortable truth, and this one really exposes the high price paid for choosing that path of least resistance, so the path of perceived safety. Comfort can kill purpose.
This is about the trade-off. The bargain you made, maybe without even realizing it was a bargain. You prioritized playing it safe.
Mm-hmm.
You followed the script diligently because it promised stability, security. You carefully avoided things that felt messy, chaotic, unpredictable, or genuinely risky. You stuck to the rules, kept your head down, colored inside the lines.
And what did you get in return for that rigid safety seeking? It's described as a life that is, yes, stable, objectively predictable, and the devastating kicker, completely soulless. That's the trade nobody warns you about, the fine print. When you choose perceived safety and external validation over listening to your internal truth, you lose something vital. You sacrifice something deep, something sacred. That connection to your aliveness, your purpose, your spark.
And it really challenges the whole idea of this stability you've worked so hard to create, suggesting that a lot of what feels like solid ground under your feet is actually just fear in disguise.
That fear shows up in so many ways, subtle and not so subtle. The
Yeah.
fear of looking stupid if you try something and it doesn't work out, or if you admit you don't know something. The fear of being judged harshly by others for stepping off the conventional path, for being different.
Yeah.
The fear of making a wrong move
Yeah.
that could threaten your perceived security or expose you somehow. And underlying a lot of it, that deep fear of being exposed as fundamentally not enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough if you're not following the approved plan.
So, driven by these fears, maybe masked as a sensible desire for stability, you adopt behaviors designed to keep you safe and liked. You learn to shrink, to make yourself smaller, less noticeable, less opinionated. Try not to take up too much space or attract criticism.
You become a master at pleasing, putting others' comfort, happiness, and opinions way ahead of your own needs and desires.
Absolutely. And you constantly perfect, pouring energy into making your life, your work, your appearance look flawless on the outside as a defense against judgment. You literally make yourself smaller to be liked and feel safe.
But the fundamental tragic problem with this whole strategy, as it's presented, is that the version of you that feels safe isn't the real you. The version of you that's safe isn't real. You've made this profound trade. You traded truth for performance. You swapped your inner fire, that sense of aliveness and purpose, for a predictable, sterile formula for living.
And the result of that trade, you're not really living, not in the vibrant sense. You're just managing. You didn't build a life that reflects your soul. Instead, you built a cage.
A cage that, from the outside, might look pretty nice, maybe even enviable. It's polished, shiny on the surface. Maybe it's padded with material comforts. It's definitely Instagrammable, perfectly curated for everyone to see.
Right.
But no matter how good it looks, it is fundamentally still a cage, limiting your movement, your growth, your spirit.
And trapped inside that cage, by carefully avoiding everything that scares you, the risk, the mess, the uncertainty, there's a crucial point made. You are simultaneously avoiding what could wake you up.
Oh.
The very things that would challenge you, stretch you, connect you to your real desires, and ultimately make you feel most alive are precisely the things you're steering clear of, all in the name of safety.
There's another vivid metaphor used for this. It's like keeping your boat tied up safe in the harbor, making sure it never hits rough water or goes off course, meticulously keeping the boat from rocking. And then you wonder why you never move forward.
Yeah. Real progress, real growth, discovering new shores.
Yeah.
That requires leaving the safe harbor.
Because, the argument goes, the moment you stop taking those authentic risks, not reckless gambling, but risks aligned with your truth, you stop growing. And the consequence is put very starkly. And when you stop growing, you start dying.
Not physically dying, obviously, but like a spiritual or emotional death. A loss of vitality, of purpose.
Exactly. And the most painful part, all of this happens, it's emphasized, all in the name of doing things right, following the script, playing it safe.
So the conclusion to this part poses a really direct and challenging question, forcing you to look past the polished bars of the cage. Is your life really stable or just lifeless? It demands a deep internal check-in, asking you to distinguish between a life that's merely secure on the outside and one that has genuine inner vitality, meaning, and aliveness.
So, okay, we've walked through the emptiness, the sneaky nature of the script, these uncomfortable truths about why we might end up living a life that just doesn't fit. Now we get to the turning point, the radical call to action. This is where the possibility for real deep change comes in.
And the action proposed is deliberately strong, almost provocative. You must be willing to burn the damn rule book.
And it's really important to understand what burning means here. It's laid out very clearly. It doesn't mean making small edits, tweaking a few lines in the script, highlighting the bits you like better, hoping to improve it from the inside.
No.
It means burning it completely.
Yeah.
Destroying the blueprint that wasn't yours to begin with.
Why so drastic?
The reasoning seems to be that if the script itself is the source of the pain, your life doesn't need minor fixes within that broken system. Your life doesn't need a patch. Trying to feel better by just working harder within the script is pointless. It needs a purge, a total clearing out of the foundation that's making you feel sick.
And this speaks directly to what so many of us have already tried, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've likely spent years, maybe decades, trying to fix that feeling of emptiness or dissatisfaction from inside the life that objectively isn't broken in the usual sense. It's just fundamentally not yours.
Yeah. You keep trying to feel better about a path, a structure, a set of expectations you never truly chose for yourself.
What about things like meditating, journaling, reading self-help? Do they fit in?
Well, the way it's presented is that these coping mechanisms, while potentially useful tools in other contexts, are often used here instead of facing the core problem. It's not that they're bad in themselves, but when used to avoid confronting the fundamental misalignment, they're framed as band-aids on a wound that keeps bleeding.
Hmm. Temporary relief, maybe, but not healing the source.
Exactly. They might offer moments of peace or insight, but they won't heal the wound if the life you are living is the source of the injury.
Which leads to that really hard truth, stated with absolute clarity. You can't heal in a life that's making you sick. If the very structure of your days, your work, your relationships, your goals, all based on that external script, is the root cause of that feeling of slow death or functional emptiness, no amount of self-improvement within that structure is going to bring lasting healing.
It then pivots to what's identified as the wrong question most people ask when they feel this way. It seems like the obvious, logical question, right? How do I find happiness? If you're unhappy, surely you need to find happiness.
Seems intuitive, yeah, like
Right.
happiness is a thing out there you need to locate or earn.
Exactly. But the argument here is that asking, how do I find happiness, totally misunderstands the core issue. The real question, the one that's far more confronting, far more honest, and way more revealing is this. Why are you trying to be happy in a life you secretly hate? And it explicitly says, let that land. Just sit with that for a second. It forces you to consider that the emptiness isn't because you're bad at finding happiness, but because there's a fundamental mismatch between who you are and the life you're trying to live.
Why are you trying to be happy in a life you secretly hate?
Ah.
Wow, that lands hard. Okay, so if that's the real question, what comes next? It prompts you to ask yourself something labeled as dangerous. Not physically dangerous, but dangerous to your illusions, demanding radical honesty.
Yep.
The question, if nobody judged you, what would you do differently right now? And there's huge emphasis on the immediacy. Not tomorrow, not after you save more money, not when it's safe. It strips away all the external what-ifs and asks what you would dare to change, start, or stop this very second if the fear of judgment, criticism, or failure was completely off the table.
And it pushes deeper into that imagined space of freedom. If no one would roll their eyes at your unconventional idea, if no one would question your sudden change of direction, if you knew for sure no one was watching or evaluating you, what would you finally let yourself want?
Not what you feel you should want, or what looks responsible, or what fits the script.
No, what are those buried desires deep inside really whispering? What would you finally give yourself permission even to desire?
So this call to burning the script, it's powerful, maybe even scary. Is it about just blowing everything up?
It seems crucial to understand that it's not presented as advocating for impulsive destruction or creating chaos for chaos's sake. The clarification is important. It's fundamentally about embracing realness.
And realness here means?
It's defined simply, but it's profound. Cutting the crap and giving yourself permission to live for something real. Stripping away the performance, the pretense, the layers of expectation, and daring to build a life based on what genuinely feels true and meaningful to you, no matter how messy or uncertain that looks from the outside.
Which leads to a kind of liberation,
Mhm.
right? Liberation from constantly seeking external validation.
A huge liberation. It's about stopping performance for people who aren't even thinking about you. Just pause on that. How much energy do we pour into trying to impress or get approval from people who are totally wrapped up in their own lives, or maybe aren't even in our lives anymore?
Yeah.
And it's about stopping chasing approval from ghosts, seeking validation from past figures, old relationships, or internalized critical voices that don't even represent real people anymore.
And the cost of keeping up that performance, for an audience that's either absent or indifferent, it's stated directly, no pulling punches. And it's killing you.
Killing your energy, your joy, your creativity, your very sense of self. It's that slow death we talked about, fueled by this desperate need for external applause.
So what's the alternative? Where does real happiness come from then?
The antidote suggested is simple in concept, but requires immense courage and practice. Real happiness, genuine fulfillment, it doesn't come from fitting in. Trying to jam yourself into a shape designed by others only leaves you feeling misshapen and empty.
Right.
Instead, it comes from showing up as you are and finally owning it. That internal alignment where your outer life starts to reflect your inner truth, that's where aliveness is found.
So the final direct instruction from this whole section is really a powerful summary of everything before it. Stop fixing the mask.
Yeah.
The performance isn't the thing to improve, it's the symptom of the deeper issue.
Then what?
Take it off. Reveal the real you, the one that's been hidden away, and burn the script. Destroy the faulty blueprint that was never yours.
Which brings us to the final section. This presents the stark reality and the unavoidable choice that seems to follow from everything we've been exploring.
Yeah, it starts with a really unflinching look at the current situation for many people listening. If you still feel that persistent emptiness, if you wake up with that heavy silence or that quiet dread, if your life looks fine on paper but feels fundamentally wrong deep inside, then it's not working.
No room for denial there.
None. The symptoms are clear signs that the current path isn't feeding your soul, it's draining it.
And it's direct about how useless it is to ignore these signals. Pretending it is, that won't save you. Wishing the emptiness away, telling yourself you should be happy, putting on a brave face, none of that fixes the root problem. It just prolongs the pain and the disconnection.
You can definitely keep trying to fix things within the old framework. Keep forcing those smiles. Keep diligently checking off boxes on the external script. Keep stacking up more accomplishments, more stuff, more external signs of success, hoping that somehow, maybe this time, it'll fill the void inside.
But the central, unavoidable truth comes back again. They won't. Those external achievements, gathered on a path that isn't really yours, they simply can't fill an internal emptiness that comes from being out of alignment with your true self. Because the truth isn't hiding from you.
Where is it then?
It's not a mystery you need to solve by looking harder outside yourself. It's screaming inside you. That ache, that numbness, that feeling of slow death that is the truth, desperately trying to get your attention, begging you to listen.
And faced with this screaming truth, there are basically two stark options presented. No comfortable middle ground offered here.
Option 1, bury it. Choose to keep going down the path of pretending, suppressing your real desires and feelings. Keep performing the role the script gave you. Keep drifting through a life you never truly chose. And the outcome stated for this choice is blunt. Stay numb forever.
Wow.
It's presented as choosing the perceived safety and validation of the cage over the risk and aliveness of building something authentic.
Okay, what's option 2?
Option 2, build something real from it. This is the path that starts by facing the truth, acknowledging the emptiness and the misalignment. It means accepting you might need to start over, not necessarily burning everything down overnight, but consciously rebuilding your life's foundation based on authenticity.
That sounds daunting.
It does. It means being willing to start messy, because dismantling years of performance and building something true isn't neat or linear. It means accepting you will start scared, because stepping off the known script into the unknown is terrifying, especially after seeking safety for so long. But the key, the non-negotiable part, is to start honest. Build from a place of radical truth about who you are and what you genuinely want.
And for this second path, the path of building something real and honest, there's a prerequisite, isn't there?
Yes, nothing changes, nothing can change until you stop the fundamental lie. Nothing changes until you stop lying to yourself. The performance, the pretense that it's all fine, that the script works, that you should be happy, that lie has to end first.
And so it delivers this final challenge. Cutting through all the potential excuses, all the delays, it's direct, powerful, urgent. Rip the mask off. Stop performing. Show your real face. Burn the script. Destroy the blueprint for the life that wasn't yours. And then, the ultimate invitation, the real start. Start your life.
Begin building the life that is authentically yours, however messy or scary that feels.
And the alternative is laid out just as starkly. Or stay numb forever. It's presented as that binary choice. Face the truth or bury it and stay numb.
And the urgency is stressed one last time. This is it. The moment of decision, the turning point is right now. Now. Not later. Not when things feel safer. Not next month. Why now? Because you don't need more time.
You don't need more time to think or plan or hesitate.
Apparently not. What you need is more truth. More willingness to face the reality of how you feel inside, the reality of the life you've built, and the reality of what you truly desire underneath all the fear and expectation.
So we started this deep dive with that feeling so many people recognize the paradox of having outward success but feeling this deep emptiness inside. We journey through these uncomfortable truths that suggest it comes from following an external script, chasing approval, burying our real desires, choosing comfort over aliveness.
Yeah, we explored the idea that the life you've built, even if it looks successful, might actually be a kind of polished cage if it wasn't built on your own authenticity.
And these powerful ideas we've explored today, they ultimately leave us with a pretty significant challenge to think about. The core suggestion seems to be that the emptiness isn't a sign you failed, but a signal, a screaming truth inside you saying the path you're on isn't right for your soul.
And it presents this idea that the only way to move past that numbness, to really heal, to build something real and feel truly alive, is to face that truth head on. Rip off the mask you wore for safety and burn the script that held you captive.
It definitely doesn't offer easy answers, but it makes the choice seem very clear. That process of building an authentic life, messy, scary, all that has to start now with an act of radical honesty.
It really asks you to sit with that final question. What truth is screaming inside you right now, demanding to be heard, acknowledged, and finally acted upon today?
Definitely something to sit with.